afternoon, everyone. It is Bridget here from Bridget's Healthy Kitchen, and it is bread week in my kitchen. I am super excited. I hope you are as excited as me because it's going to be fabulous. I have 3 brand new bread recipes to share with you guys. I've been doing lots and lots of testing because I know one of the, I suppose, concerns that a lot of us have, and I was definitely in that camp when I first started on my health journey. I was very concerned that I would have to give up bread. And I did give up plastic, supermarket, store-bought bread, 100%, because it's just no good for me, but I have not definitely given up bread. As soon as I got down to a health and a weight that was really sustainable for me, I've started to include all these delicious things back into my everyday diet. So I want to share some of the recipes that we enjoy in our house. And today's recipe is a good one. It is literally a there's so many frees, there's so many things that are not in here. It's kind of crazy, so bear with me. It is gluten-free, of course it's gluten-free. It is also grain-free, so you won't find any corn or any rice flour or anything like that. It is yeast-free, which is quite important for some of us who are still under lockdown restrictions and find it a little bit difficult to find yeast at the supermarket. It is, of course, dairy-free, it is sugar-free, but it's not flavor-free. And because there's no yeast, it literally takes minutes to make, probably about as long as me going yabba 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 at the beginning of this. So thank you for all of you who have joined me on the very first class of our bread week. Remember, it is a gluten-free, grain-free sandwich loaf. So we're making a sandwich loaf, which is exciting because we all need a bit of sandwich in our life, a really healthy sandwich. So let's get into the recipe. It is simple dimple. I do have my lovely machine here that is just going to give me a bit of a hand, but if you don't have an electric whisk, you still can do this by hand. It just takes a little bit more time. So come on down to my bench. Let's have a little look at what I have in front of me. This particular bread recipe has got eggs. I will be sharing an egg-free recipe for those who can't have eggs and still want to eat bread. I will be sharing that later in the week as well, so I've got you guys covered. So the first thing we want to do, as you can see, I've got some eggs here, and we want to separate our eggs because we're going to whip the whites up, hence why I've got my lovely mixer here. We're going to whip the whites up to they're nice and stiff. So the first thing you want to do is you want to separate your eggs. Now make sure when you are wanting to whip your egg whites up, whether you're making pavlova or whether you're making meringue or whatever it is, put my egg yolk straight there, make sure that your eggs are at room temperature, because if they are cold straight from the fridge, you will not be able to whip them up to a really nice volume. And the secret to this bread, because remember we've got no yeast in here, so the secret to this bread is that we are whipping the whites, and as we're whipping the whites, we're whipping air into it. So what I've done, of course, I've got 2 egg whites in there so far, and I've got 2 yolks. Look how wonderful those yolks are. I've got 2 yolks in there. I only need 2 yolks, so I'm actually going to save the other 2 yolks. I need 4 egg whites, but only 2 yolks. So what I suggest you do, and is obviously not throw those yolks away because they're still really, really good, but keep them for something like making my healthy, my homemade hollandaise, which I shared with you guys a couple days ago here in Bridget's kitchen when we did a healthy brunch. You could make obviously sauce out of it, you could add it into an omelette, and then there's so many things you can do with your egg yolks. So I'm just going to put them into a container and just set them aside. Don't need them right now. We're going to be dealing with what I've got here. So 4 egg whites and 2 egg yolks. So over to my mixer, I am going to put it on because all I want to do is I want to create obviously a nice fluffy egg white. So turn it on, get that going. Like I said, you can do this by hand, it just requires a bit of elbow grease. This is a lot quicker and faster, apologies for the noise. Over here, into our egg yolks, I'm coming close so you can see in here, into our egg yolks, we are now going to add in some water. Warm water is going to go into there next. So I'm going to put in 120 mils of warm water is going to go into here. 120, around about that much. Give it a bit of a whisk. whisk to combine. Why are we using warm water, you may ask? The reason why we're using warm water is that it's really going to help all the ingredients to come together quite nicely rather than using cold water. I always use warm water when I make bread. So warm water's in there. Now we're going to add in some coconut oil. I've got 60 grams, which is 2 ounces of coconut oil. Is going to go into there as well. There we go. Give that a bit of a whisk. And that is literally our wet ingredients done. But what I need to do now is turn this up and make it whisk real fast. So for about 30 seconds, you probably won't hear me talk. Are you ready? I'm going to turn it up now. It's really hard not to talk. I don't know what to do. I'm at loose end. Okay, what we're looking for here, hence why I got one with a glass bowl, because now you guys can actually see what's going on inside my mixer. It is so exciting. It also has a little light. Did you notice that? Let me turn it on. Do you see how it gets brighter? It's got a light. It's very cool. So what I'm looking for here, and this is what you need to look for, because remember, this is how we get the rise out of our bread and it's not heavy, is by doing this egg white whisking. So at the moment I've got, it's just kind of frothy. We actually want to take it further than that and get it nice and stiff. So big noise again, bear with me. Keeping you entertained. Alright, it's starting to come together now. I'm noticing that the whisk is leaving trail marks in the whites. That's how you know that you're getting to that point of it being nice and stiff. Now, as this is whisking, I'm going to add in half a teaspoon, I know it's backwards, but that's cream of tartar. Half a teaspoon of cream of tartar is going to just sprinkle it on top of the whites. And what that is actually going to do, it's going to help to keep them, to hold the whites firm, which is what we want when we start making our bread. So, big noise again. Coming together nicely. It's beginning to leave, remember, streaks in the whites, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I reckon we're probably about a good 20-second explosion of speed and then we'll be ready to go. Seriously, I'm in love with this machine. I just adore it. It's really, really good. This is what we're after. So you see how firm that is? It is so firm that I can do that. Just when you do that, make sure it's firm. Otherwise you're going to get egg white all over your bench. So you can see that it's left marks in it. It's lovely and firm. That cream of tartar is in there to stabilize the egg whites as well, which is really important. So we can get on to the business of mixing the dry ingredients into our dough. There is not much more that needs to happen. Like literally, this is the hardest part. Well, it's not even hard, it's just the longest part, especially if you are doing it by hand. But something like this obviously makes it pretty simple. So the next, when it comes to the dry ingredients, I'm going to be putting in almond flour. You could use whatever gluten-free flour that you want. I quite like almond flour because it does definitely have a very neutral flavor. And this is kind of, I suppose, this is more of a of a white or a blonde style bread, so almond flour, but there's nothing stopping you from using other nut flours, or even at a pinch you could use seed flours if you want to do a nut-free option, you can do that as well. So straight into the liquid, we're going to be adding in, better put that onto 0, 0. We're going to be adding in 200 grams, which is 7 ounces, I can probably tip that, 7 ounces of our almond flour, or whatever gluten-free flour that you want to play around with. Like I said, almond is a very neutral flavor, so it does work really well in this bread. So 200 grams, 7 ounces goes in there. We are also going to be putting into it a little bit of baking powder, not too much. So baking powder is 1.5 teaspoons, just sprinkle that on top. 1.5 teaspoons goes in there, about that much. As well as the baking powder, our friend xanthan gum, which helps to bind everything in together. So 1/2 teaspoon of our xanthan gum goes in. We can't forget salt, because salt is what's going to help to give our bread a lovely flavor. So a scant, which is not a full teaspoon of salt goes in there, nice mineral salt. How could I forget? This is how we're going to be fortifying our bread. So what we're making here is, yes, we're making a gluten and grain-free sandwich loaf, which is delicious. It's delicious. But we are also making a fiber-rich bread as well. So this is the first of our fibers, and this is our inulin powder. Our sweet as inulin powder is going in there. Right, oh sorry, our pure as inulin powder, it's our sweet as fiber syrup. So we're putting in 2 tablespoons of inulin powder. Now this loaf will give you 12 slices. So if you're thinking that's a lot of inulin powder, it balances itself out, because of course you're not going to sit there and eat the whole loaf. You need to use moderation. So inulin is there. And the second way we're going to fortify this loaf with fiber, with great dietary fiber, is we're also going to be adding in psyllium husks. So you can see I love psyllium husks. I've got a big jar. I think it's fantastic. If you're wondering where to get psyllium husks from, pretty much every good supermarket gives you psyllium husks now, so you can do that. And what we're going to be putting in here is 20 grams of our psyllium husks, which is about 2 tablespoons. But I want you to measure here, because psyllium husks, yes, they do work as a wonderful binder, but if you add too much, you're going to make glue. So we're going to weigh it out, and it's 20 grams of our psyllium husk goes in there. And now we have this bread that is literally fortified. It is like a fortification of dietary fiber, which is so good for your gut health, of course. So onto our little whisk, give it a little bit of a mix together. And that is the mixture pretty much done, apart from the last element that we need to do is we need to fold in those egg whites. And I will emphasize the word fold here, because folding is what's going to make sure that we don't knock all the air out of there. All the air, all the work that we did with this machine and it whisking away and making all that noise will be for nothing if we really clumsily and quite heavily now combine these two mixtures. So this is when I go for my spatula. And the first thing you want to do, very much like when you're meeting someone for the first time, you want to introduce yourself to each other. You know, you guys want to have a bit of a, hi, how are you? So this is a hi, how are you? You start with that, not too much. And because I'm only using a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just begin to fold that through. I'm not being as gentle with this lot, because remember, this is just a hi, how you doing? This is the introduction. It's really important that you don't just bang everything in there, because if you do that, you're going to knock out all the air. So we are introducing the egg whites to our bread batter. That's the first thing. Introducing each other. They're getting to know each other nicely, and what you would have noticed is that the batter has started to loosen up a bit, which is really important. So we still need to bring them together slowly. Oh, look at that, isn't that just the best? Look how, wow, this would make the start of a really good pavlova. With this is such a great whipped white. So remember, we're still doing the slow introductions. So I've probably added a good couple of, big heap tablespoons there. And now I'm going to begin with the more delicate introduction. So rather than being a little bit heavy-handed, this is when your folding arm comes into play. So that's when the spatula is most important. You don't want to be heavy, because because what will happen, you'll knock out all that wonderful air that we have incorporated into it, and which is really, really important to give us a lovely light sandwich loaf, which is what we want. Okay, we're going to introduce a little bit more. It's looking pretty good, so we're going to go, yeah, you can come in here too, you can come in. And once again, you just want to go with that very light folding. You know, if it's got a few lumps, that's okay. You don't have to completely mix it all through, because in doing that complete mix all through, of course, we run the risk of knocking out the air. So little pockets of bubbles is absolutely fine. That's why the spatula is so handy. Give everything a bit of a scrape out. Make sure you get every last little bit, because it's going to help with our rise. Looking pretty good there. So once again, the last bit of folding. I am being so gentle right now. Like literally, if this was a baby, the baby wouldn't even wake up from its sleep, because I'm being so gentle. Gentle, okay, that's it, right. So, all we need to do now is to put it in the tin. What have I done with the tin? Oh, it's over here. I'm going for a loaf tin. I don't know how big it is. It's about that big. If you want to get quite a fat sandwich, then your loaf tin needs to be smaller than this. I don't know what size that is. It's that size. You know, it's about the size of my arm. I know that's not a very good way of showing you guys how big it is, but that's what I know right now. Okay, baking paper, of course, non-stick, because that is going to stick like crazy. And baking paper means we don't have to add any more anything to grease this, which is good, because you know there's enough going on in here that we can actually avoid having to grease a tin. And baking paper, of course, makes sure that it's easy to clean up afterwards. It's a win-win. It's a win-win. All right, just rough, doesn't matter, just like that. Okay, once again, back to that really careful plopping. If you've ever plopped carefully, this is the time to do it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Plop carefully, because you want to have a light mixture. And remember, being too heavy means you will have a heavy mixture. I think that's probably the best way to remember it. If I'm being too rough and I'm being too heavy, the bread will be heavy as well when it comes out the other end. Now, by the way, I have my oven already preheating on 180 degrees Celsius, which is 350 degrees Fahrenheit, or also known as a moderate oven. And what we're going to do now that we're at this point, you just smooth off the top. Just smooth it on down. Once again, be gentle, be gentle, be gentle. Smooth it off, make sure it's sort of evenly placed throughout the loaf tin. Yeah, just like that. And your next job is to take that over to the oven, pop it in the oven. It needs to be in there for between 35 to 40 minutes, I do find is the ideal time frame. But of course, every oven is different. So what you need to do is do your checks when you come to about the 30-minute mark. Have a look at it. Make sure it's not browning too much on top. If it's getting too dark on top, you can just lay another piece of baking paper over the top to stop it browning as much. But to check it's done after that 35 to 40-minute mark, you can get a skewer and put a skewer right into the middle, and that skewer needs to come out with no dough attached. The other way that I like to test whether it's done is actually to pick up the paper and tap the bottom of the loaf. If the loaf sounds hollow, then you know it is cooked through. So that goes off to the oven. 35, 40 minutes later, and you will be rewarded with this gorgeous loaf of bread. Now, by the way, I couldn't wait. I've already tried it. Oh, I couldn't wait. You know what, this smells so good baking. I was just like, oh, I can't wait. Sorry, I'm gonna have to try it. And let me tell you, it is fabulous. Now, as I was saying, if you want to get your loaf, your sandwich higher, you just use a smaller tin. But you can also double the recipe as well. When you double the recipe, you're probably going to need about 50 minutes to an hour cooking as well if you want to make a really, really big piece. But the beauty about this particular loaf. And why? Look at it. Oh, it's just gorgeous. The beauty about this sort of loaf, and by the way, when it comes out of the oven, you need to cool it completely before you slice it. That is also another really hard fact, is that you need to wait, because it's still cooking inside and it might be still a little bit doughy, and what you want is you want it to have those wonderful air bubbles in there, which is telling you that you've got a really light mixture. So one of the beauties about eating this type of bread, because we're used to, like, you know, sandwich bread or bread from the bakery, which is just like this massive ass loaf of literally nothing. It's not going to fill you up, it's not going to satisfy you, it'll give you a momentary rise, spike in your insulin, your blood glucose, and then you'll come crashing back down. This is not that loaf. You don't need as much in order to stay full. This is what bread should be like. Because what you have here is the ability to not spike your insulin, to give you all that dietary fiber, and you also have, I don't know why I'm talking to the bread, you also can become so satisfied because there is so much flavor in this loaf. So this type of loaf here, if you want to, you can also freeze it, which is so clever. But to freeze it, I suggest you cut it into slices first. You can get 12, 14 slices, depending how thin you like to slice it. And then I like to always freeze my bread in 2 slice loads, so that when I'm ready to eat some bread, I just take it out of the freezer and then I pop it into the toaster and it defrosts right there and then. So you're never far away from something like this. And quite frankly, this is stunning. So give it a go. I will place or put up the recipe tomorrow if you'd like a PDF copy of the recipe, but you've seen the technique now, so you guys know what you're in for, and it's not too much, it's not too scary, but I'll post a PDF on Bridget's Healthy Kitchen for you guys tomorrow. And please don't forget that if you want to be part of our second Wednesday night live chat room, it is happening tomorrow, which is Wednesday here in Sydney at 6:30 at night. You need to be on our private page, you'll see the announcement, click that you want to come, and then we will see you tomorrow night for our live chat room on Bridget's Healthy Kitchen. But right now, it's bread time. I'm so excited. Here's Mahi. He's around somewhere. He's going to be coming in here pretty soon, I reckon. Alright guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe wherever you are, stay well, and we'll see you for the next very exciting bread class right here. Take care. Bye.